But what a lot of people are not familiar with when addressing gut issues, even things that are deemed healthy can contribute to existing gut issues. Let's go over the 5R program. So what is the 5R program? This is a program designed by practitioners and professionals to help address gut issues, whatever the cause may be, whether it's an overgrowth of bacteria, high amounts of inflammation, autoimmune disease, and whatnot. This is something that was implemented a while ago and has proven to be quite effective when used properly within the right context. And so this is something that I myself use with my clients when we're going through gut protocols. And I'll go into a little in depth of what everything means. I'm not going to get into specific supplements and everything because that could just send somebody down the wrong path without proper supervision to help with a professional. But give you a general idea of what each of these mean, and if you're looking to work on the gut health on your own, this might be a good place to start. So number one is remove. And so what do we mean by that? Well, we obviously want to remove things that can contribute to the poor gut health. So we're talking things like processed foods, excuse my writing, processed foods, alcohol, like obviously the bad stuff that we're pretty aware of, drugs and such. But what a lot of people are not familiar with when addressing gut issues, even things that are deemed healthy can contribute to existing gut issues. So they need to be a part of the removal phase. So things like FODMAPs, which some of you may have heard of, and things like histamine containing foods. So foods that fall in those categories are what we would call healthy. So we're looking at things like avocados, for example, are very high in histamine. You're looking at pineapple, nuts, like there's quite a few foods that can be high in histamine and high in FODMAPs. And FODMAPs, the simplicity is like fermented foods that could lead to like more bloating and gas depending on which bacteria you have. So you'd want to remove those just in the beginning though, because these foods are also super important for the later phases, which I'll get into. But in the beginning, you want to remove things like FODMAPs and histamine, for example. But the main focus of the removal phase is the bacteria. Now, this is where a GI map really comes in. I'll link my GI map video here so you can have an idea of what that is. But if you take a GI map, you will know like exactly what needs to be addressed instead of kind of guessing, because different strains of bacteria can require different removal processes. Or you may have like low healthy flora that needs to be addressed prior. There's quite a few situations that could occur with this. But removal of the bacteria, pathogens, viruses, parasites, that is all going to be in the removal phase. Okay, so now think of this like your garden, right? We don't like, if we got weeds and dandelions and all that junk in there, we don't want to start watering that garden and to enable those to grow. So we got to get rid of them first, right? So this is why we start with the remove phase. So this is removing processed foods, alcohol, drugs, and such are what is going to help expedite the process and not feed into existing issues. And along with the FODMAP and histamine foods, just temporarily for some individuals. And then obviously focusing on the removal of bacteria, pathogens, viruses, things along those natures, okay? So then your next step, which is in most cases goes together with the remove phase, but not always, is replace. And what we mean by that is we don't mean replacing like bacteria in these foods and stuff. We're talking digestive support, okay? So we're looking at the form of things like pancreatic enzymes, your protease, almase, and lipase. For example, you may need more advanced ones depending on the situation, the individual, but also things like hydrochloric acid. And so this is why you have to be careful with this. I'm just going to put digestive support. Can you even read that? And so why you want to be careful with this is because, so for example, I mentioned stomach acid, because the environment that these things can cause can create a reduction in stomach acid, which can be like I won't want to say the root cause, but definitely create a very optimal environment for bad things to occur within the gut. But if you're dealing with a very damaged like mucosal lining or high levels of H. pylori, I'm sure by now if you've been watching my content, I talk about this quite a bit. You don't really want to be bringing in an HCl, like a supplement, a hydrochloric acid supplement, while in the removal phase, because it could just exacerbate issues and make bloating worse and make you feel like crap, right? So once again, it's in context of the individual. So this is like the beginning phases here, okay? And this, once again, is going to be N of 1 in terms of duration. So some people could be 1 month, some people could be 4 to 8 months. It all just depends on the severity. And that's why a GI map is like extremely crucial, because then you know what exact time frame you could potentially be working with. So I shouldn't say exact time frame, but I have a much better insight of what potential time frame you could be working with. So once you get through these phases, that's when you come into the reinoculate. And so that is your probiotics. So once again, this is where a GI map is super, super beneficial. And a couple examples is because if you have somebody that has SIBO, so small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, they might not need certain probiotics or at certain levels, because then you can kind of just, contribute. Like, let's say you did a lot of killing, you might bring that normal commensal flora, your healthy flora, to an optimal range with that killing. I'm not saying that is what's always going to happen, but that's what could happen. So then you start pouring on more probiotics and you could overpopulate a specific strain, leading to gut issues again, right? So once again, GI map, super, super beneficial, because it's also not just as simple as going to the store and grabbing any probiotic. You want to look at certain strains that get lower into the digestive system, or ones like spore probiotics that populate certain areas of the microbiome. So GI map, once again, will really help you make the right decisions and significantly decrease your risk of relapse, because the relapse rate is pretty high with these programs, which I'll comment on at the end. So the reinoculate is replenishing, restoring that bacteria. So replacing your good bacteria. And then so now the repair phase, that's going to be repairing things like the mucosal lining. So the mucosal lining is the protective barrier of the gut. And over time, think of it as like dry lips, right? They crack and bleed and whatnot. And so that's what can happen to the mucosal lining. So these cracks allow food and such through and create a lot of inflammation, which is going to be exacerbated by this condition, or that is what led to this condition of overgrowth and lack of digestive support. But you want to repair. Now, this is going to involve things like, this is where you can start to bring back in histamine and FODMAP foods, because they're going to contain fibers that are going to really help rebuild the mucosal lining. So we'll just say mucosa lining. Okay, your endothelial cells, muscle cells, gall cells, like there's all that technical stuff, but just we'll isolate it as mucosal lining. Okay, repairing the stomach. Okay, is what we will say for simplicity's sake. And so that is where you probably bring in foods that were higher in FODMAPs and histamines. And now that'll be okay, because you're not going to have the overgrowth anymore. And you're also going to have the beneficial bacteria to digest these foods properly. And with the healthy microbiome, you're going to have a good gene response, which is going to help clear a lot of histamine. And so that is where you can bring back those foods in. But you can also use, there's certain products that help. Your immune system is going to need some repair as well. So that's where we look at things like immunoglobulins. You can get them from like colostrum and dairy and whatnot. Now they have dairy-free immunoglobulins, which you could bring in this phase. Once again, N of 1, depending on the individual, but this is a good place to bring that all in and repair that mucosal lining. This is going to be the longer duration most likely, because when you look at like GI specialists and naturopaths and stuff, a lot of the time what they do is they do this and this. They remove and then they put probiotics in, they call it good. If you do the research, there's a 60 to 80% relapse rate, especially when using antibiotics. So you don't want to skip these steps. And this is why this one is so important because, well, these two, but because that's what's going to create those preventative measures of that relapse. So rebalance, that's just making sure that like a healthy lifestyle and spell healthy, healthy lifestyle, stress management, okay? Things like that to prevent this from all reoccurring, because like a huge cause of gut issues is stress. Like you would not believe how much stress causes gut issues. Like currently a client of mine is like really working on reducing her stress through any means. And like we're starting to suddenly, like overnight, there was a drastic reduction in her distension. All because now she's feeling hopeful with the stress management that she's implemented. So the stress is huge. Like that's a big one. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. So that's what the rebalance is. Proper food, proper water intake, you know, making sure that if there is something that genetically contributed to this, that is being supported, whether it is you have some sort of, you know, pancreatic deficiency due to something that you continue to take digestive enzymes or whichever, right? So the rebalance is just making sure that your lifestyle as a whole is going to have the preventative capacity for this to not reoccur and have to go through the whole 5R program, right? So as mentioned, remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, rebalance. And that if you follow these steps and you commit to the time in these, right, then there's a very, very high chance that you will overcome a lot of the issues that you have been dealing with and a very, very high chance of not relapsing back to those. Because myself, I went through and I pretty much skipped these phases. I just wanted to eat food and put on size. And so I relapsed, right? And this is why you don't want to skip these phases, because that is what will most likely happen if you do. But as mentioned, this is something that practitioners and professionals have been using for a while now, and it is very, very effective. And as mentioned, I don't want to get into like specific supplements and protocols to address this because everyone is different, and what may work for someone could be pretty bad for somebody else. But this will give you a general idea, and you can, you know, further your research or reach out to me for help. But yeah, this is a great program here, okay? So if you like that video, please hit the like and subscribe button and follow me on Instagram at that.coach.curtis.